today. My name is Will Dupree, and I'm a reporter and anchor with KXAN in Austin. We appreciate the cheers. And we have a couple of panelists who are still making their way here, so we're going to go ahead and get started. And first, we're just going to introduce our 8 guests. They're going to be here today. We'll introduce the other 2 once they get here. But first up, and we're going to have each of them just kind of say hello. Ash Hall works with ACLU of Texas. Brad Pritchett works with Equality Texas. Melodia Gutierrez works for Human Rights Campaign. We have Pflugerville City Councilmember Rudy Metayer. Meaghan Bihun, who is a local activist and LGBTQ consultant. And State Representative Sheryl Cole is here as well. All right, so all the speakers, you guys will come up to the mics as we answer some of the questions, and I will direct questions to you directly, but if you want to jump in too, please feel free and share your opinions on that as well, so feel free. All right, everybody, I see we have one more guest coming up onto the stage. Please welcome State Representative James Talarico. All right, I want to get a vibe check first. That's what I want to get out the way. So obviously in this current political climate, I want to know how you all are feeling about celebrating Pride. And Ash, maybe you want to go start it and answer that.
Hello, everyone can hear me? Awesome. It feels really necessary after the legislative session we just had. That was particularly exhausting and brutal, and we saw a record number of bills that were filed aiming to target the community. So getting to come together after defeating 95% of those bills together, this feels like where we should be. We should be celebrating each other and lifting each other up.
Yeah, I think that Ash said it really well. And I think that one of the things we need to remember about Pride is like rooted in defiance. So we had over 140 bills targeting our community at the legislature this year. And our coalition of organizations, so ACLU, Equality Texas, HRC, Lambda Legal, who am I forgetting? Texas Freedom Network, the Transgender Education Network of Texas, all those organizations worked really hard to kill 95% of those bills. So we couldn't have done that without people being involved. So when you come to a Pride celebration, you're an extension of that like resistance. And we deserve to have a really, really vibrant and community-oriented Pride this year because we freaking earned it, y'all, by surviving that legislative session.
Yes, thank you. The first Pride was a protest, and here we are continuing that legacy. So be here, and your presence is an act of resistance. And also, it's a sign to everyone that we will continue, we will resist, and we will transform Texas together. So thank you for being here, and thank you for being a part of the movement.
Inclusivity. That's the first thing I think about when I think about a Pride event. I've been asked over and over again, particularly as a black man, why am I being involved in here? Why am I championing these issues? And you know, I've got to be blunt, because too often in our society, we act like things happen in silos, and what happens to one community doesn't affect the other. And I've seen too many times in this country, when issues affect the minorities in this country, people don't step up. So to be able to have a time to celebrate, to go ahead and appreciate people who are on the front lines of these issues, we need to do that. And we need to rally more people to our events to make sure this happens moving forward.
Hey everybody, as Will said, my name is James Talarico, and I have the honor, along with my colleague, Representative Cole, of representing this community in the Texas House of Representatives. And so it's an honor to be here with all of you and to be with our LGBTQ community on this important day. You know, I think Ash said it best that, you know, we have a lot to celebrate from this legislative session. 95% of those anti-LGBTQ bills were defeated by pro-LGBTQ lawmakers, but also by the activists and advocates who do this work in difficult circumstances every day. But there were also really dangerous anti-LGBTQ bills that did pass and that are now law. And so being here is a way that I can rekindle some hope. I hope that's the same thing for you, because Pride, as we've mentioned, was born out of blood and tears. And so it's helpful to remember that as we chart a path forward here in Texas. Thank you all for being here.
Hi, I'm Meaghan Bihun, and I think it's really important for us to all be together here as a community and see one another, because so frequently we hear that there aren't that many of us, or that there are so many people who don't agree, and you can look around and see who does and who's with you, and that we're all standing together, and that is one of the best things we can do for ourselves right now and for each other.
Hi, my name is Sheryl Cole, and I represent this district at the State House Legislature, and I'm proud to do it. And I'm proud to be supportive of the LGBT community. We had a hard fight this legislative session, and as James said, some bills got through. But because of our allies who are on this stage and the LGBT community supportive legislature, we stopped a lot of those bills. And I want to say thank you to you for coming up and testifying and supporting us at the legislature. Thank you.
I want to ask a little bit about news that came out recently. So this week, for the first time in its history, the Human Rights Campaign declared a national state of emergency for LGBTQ plus people here in the U.S. The Civil Rights Organization explained that they did so because of all the legislation put forward and enacted this year that would restrict things like healthcare, restroom access, sports participation, school resources, drag performances, and a whole lot more. Melodia, I wanted to maybe direct this question to you because you work for the Human Rights Campaign. Could you explain how Texas factored into that decision at all?
Yes, in a way. I can tell you that as if you Google National LGBTQ plus community, you can see the press release, and Texas figures in as all the other states do because we're impacted by all the legislation, the arc of legislation that has been passed nationwide. Where the flashpoint was actually happened in Florida. Some of the most intense bills started there, and the CEO for Equality Florida started a Know Your Rights, a state of emergency, because so many families were reaching out to them to say, we need help, we need resources. And then she came to HRC and asked for support as well. And little by little, seeing families come out to us wanting to know how they can live, play, and work in safety, we figured our CEO, Kelly Robinson, made the choice to declare a national emergency so that we can operate in safety as much as possible, and that we can provide resources in order to live and operate safely as well. And so that was how Texas figures into that, is that we're all one nation and we're all impacted, and what happens in one state can quickly happen in another. And Texas is not far behind Florida, but it's going to take us collectively to be that resistance and then organize ourselves to make the progress to ensure that additional bills not only do not get passed, but then that we turn over and defeat the ones that have been passed. Thank you for the question.
And before we move on, I just want to point out there is an ASL interpreter sitting on the right side of the tent under there for you all, so just wanted to acknowledge that. I wanted to direct a question to some of our lawmakers here, Representative Talarico and Cole. The three of you stood with most in your party this session and voted against many of these restricted bills to the LGBTQ plus community. Walk us through your reasoning for doing so.
Well, we heard from the allies, and y'all were really supportive in helping us to fight those bills and to jump on the floor and put up amendments to try to slow it down. Part of my reasoning was just being supportive of the LGBTQ community and recognizing what harm was being done. I sit on the higher education committee that heard the transgender sports bill, and we had many youth come up and testify about what harm was being done to them and their community behind those bills. And it was heart-wrenching to really listen to. But at the end of the day, the strength came from the allies and the community.
Yeah, completely agree with what Sheryl just said. And I think if I'm thinking through the three most dangerous LGBTQ attack bills that made it through, I would say the most dangerous is SB 14, which would deny many times life-saving health care from our trans youth in Texas. And the reason that I oppose that bill is because I trust parents and doctors to make decisions for kids and not politicians in Austin. And this has been, one of the themes of this session has been parental rights and parental autonomy and parental consent. And so to see my colleagues who have been champions for parents turn around and then undermine parents in our state just because they have trans kids infuriates me, and I hope it infuriates you, and I hope you remember it when you go vote next November. Thank you.
Hey there, everybody. We have one more guest joining us. This is State Senator Sarah Eckhardt over here coming up to the stage. Senator, I wanted to give you a chance because I got all the panelists to talk about this, but how you're feeling about celebrating Pride this month despite the current political climate. You wanted to go up and talk about that.
Well, first off, I got a bunch of fans up here in case anybody needs to cool off, and I'll bring those out. But how I feel about today? This is the big love, right? This is the big love that changes everything. So that's how I feel about today. Yeah, you know, the Texas legislature, that dome, is like there's an alternative universe in that building. And it's really ugly, and there's a lot of hate and a ton of internal inconsistency, philosophical inconsistency, and all of that. And I just walked up hearing Representative Talarico talk about that. But you know what? What's so great is coming to Pride festivals in Pflugerville, Pride festivals in Georgetown, cracking open the newspaper today, and in the Dear Abby section, a great letter from a couple who've been together for 30 years, have a couple of kids, and they're asking Abby, what should I do? My teenage child and my early 20s child, they love their grandparents, but their grandparents want us to lie about why they don't come around to family gatherings. They're big fat homophobes, and they want us to pretend like they are on vacation. What should we do? And Dear Abby said, 3 wrongs don't make a right, stop lying for them. Right? So that's how I feel about being at celebrations like this. This is the big love, this is the big truth, and we're not going to settle for anything less than a really big love and the truth of what really big love looks like. It looks like all of us.
Representative Talarico mentioned Senate Bill 14, and Ash, I want to direct this question to you. A law that will soon take effect will ban certain healthcare options for transgender minors in Texas. Ash's organization that they work for, the ACLU in Texas, along with several other groups, announced an intent to sue the state over that law. What can you tell us about that latest effort?
Yeah, that's 100% true. We're getting ready to file the lawsuit, so look out for that in the next couple of weeks, maybe month or so. We don't have a set date yet, but it's coming. We've got a lot of people working on this together. The arguments are pretty straightforward, and it's probably not the only lawsuit that we're going to be filing, since there are a few bills that passed. We're waiting for some of those to be signed into law, though, so right now we're prioritizing 14 since it's the only one the governor has signed so far. In the meantime, please remember that SB 14 doesn't go into effect until September, so all care for trans youth is still legal. And regardless of what this state does, we have always found ways to take care of ourselves, and we need to continue doing that, and we will find ways to do that no matter what happens.
I want to direct this question to Brad, Melodia, and Meaghan. What did this session expose about the kind of advocacy work that still needs to happen about educating Texans on LGBTQ plus issues?
Yeah, that's a question. Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that we recognize is that our messaging is often really complicated because human beings are complicated. The folks who are opposed to LGBTQ equality love to operate with bumper sticker slogans, so protect women's sports, you know, different things about healthcare for kids that I won't repeat because it's crap. And we recognize that, you know, our issues are much more complicated than we can put on a bumper sticker, because we can't really put on a bumper sticker. Gender is a complex spectrum. We don't really know where people fall on it. It takes time. Like, that's a lot to put on a bumper sticker. So I think what we realized was when people listen to us and we actually have time to talk to them, they're generally with us on our issues. The challenge that we always run into is getting above the really vocal minority who make a lot of noise and really flood TV airwaves, you know, websites with a lot of disinformation and outright lies, knowing full well that they're lying. And that includes lawmakers at the Capitol who know better than the things they're saying, and behind closed doors will say to their colleagues that they don't want to be passing these bills, they'd rather be focused on other things. But then when the time comes to vote, they vote for the stuff because they're terrified of their own electorate, because they've unleashed a monstrous electorate that they have no control over. So they have to feel like they're protected by doing awful things to people even though they know it's wrong. So the challenge for lawmakers is much tougher than the challenge for the general public, because once we have one-on-one time with the general public and we're able to actually present facts, they're generally with us.
So one of the things that we discovered repeatedly was that because the issues are complex, Brad's telling me to lean closer to the mic because I'm scared of it. So one of the things that came up repeatedly as we moved through these sessions was that folks didn't feel comfortable talking about complex issues. And as Brad was saying, they are complex issues, but we need to remember that we need to tell each of our own stories all of the time. And as we tell those stories to our lawmakers, we tell them to our school boards, we tell them to our city representatives, all of those messages filter through our communities. And those are so necessary. Your story is necessary. And without it, we're not going to get anywhere. We need every story, we need every person, and we need you everywhere.
Thank you. For me, I look at it through the eye of an organizer. And a truth I feel like I learned is that Texas lawmakers are out of step with Texans. And what we need to do as groups within Texas is organize every itty bitty part to do, as Meaghan said, lift up those stories, lift up those leaders in where I grew up, Andrews, Texas, which is a town of 8,000 people, and where there was like 3 of us that had each other as family out there. We need to be there for those people outside of, and our community, outside of the 4 populous places. We need to spread, organize, and then show our lawmakers that we are a proof point, and we want to arm them with the truth so that they go into the next legislative session unapologetic and armed with all the facts so that they create legislation that supports us versus threatens us. And that's what we need going in, is enlightened education and elegant organization. Thank you.
The next question I have is from a viewer that reached out to me once I shared that I was going to moderate this panel, and I want to direct this to our 3 lawmakers who are up here, our state lawmakers who are up here at the moment. The restrictions we saw introduced this session all came from Republican lawmakers, and they all voted in lockstep supporting those. However, several Democratic lawmakers also voted in support of those. So there is not unity on these issues within the Democratic Party in Texas, at least in the state delegation. So how do you respond to criticism that this viewer pointed out to me from some Texans that they can't even count on the Democrats to fight for them?
I know of one member who didn't vote for it and one member who white. But overwhelmingly, the Democratic Party stood with the LGBT community on fighting these issues. I think the important thing is to recognize in the districts where those members exist, they have heard loudly from their constituents about those votes. And I think it's up to us inside those districts and outside those districts to let those members know how we feel.
First of all, can we give it up for Sheryl's dress? There was one senator who did not vote with us, and he heard about it loud and clear from his Dallas-Fort Worth district, big time, and had to come out and publicly apologize. And it's that kind of discipline that comes from the grassroots up. And so I deeply appreciate all of y'all and all of our friends and allies up in the Dallas-Fort Worth area to make sure that the Democrats stand together on this issue. This issue goes to the very fundamentals of who we are as Democrats. But I want to talk to you about those Republicans for a minute, because you're right. There are plenty of those Republicans who behind closed doors know that what they're doing is wrong. I will tell you there's a few who really believe that they are God's army and that they're doing the right thing. There's no change in those folks. But I think it is important, just as we went to the constituency of weak sister Democrats and told them, don't do that no more. We also need to go to those Republican constituencies, targeted, not the ones who think they're doing God's will. We're never getting those. But the ones who are reasonable, who are only doing it in order to make a good score on their conservative scorecard. Those ones. Work in their districts. Work in their districts to find their LGBTQIA constituents who are in the business community, who are in the churches. Find their constituents who will say, you're going to have courage if you're going to be my representative. Republican or Democrat, I want my representatives to have courage and not to go along to get along, even at the expense of human lives. So hold us all accountable, Republican or Democrat. Don't shy away from holding our fellow Democrats accountable, God knows. But also, don't give up on those middle-of-the-road Republicans who would really rather be fighting over money than fighting over who you love, or what your doctor is, what you're talking about with your doctor. There's plenty of those. They just haven't shown the courage to stand up and say, stop, this is not how I want to spend my time representing my constituents. So keep working them. Organize, organize, organize.
I think we're talking mostly about SB 14, the bill that would deprive trans children of necessary health care, and also SB 12, the anti-drag bill. But I also want to say that Democrats didn't stick together on another anti-LGBTQ bill, which is the book banning bill that would remove library books in schools just because they have a gay character or they're by a gay author. That bill is un-American. I think it's unconstitutional, and I look forward to legal challenges of that bill. But I have to say, the Republican Party likes to say they are the party of freedom, the party of family, the party of faith. You can't be pro-freedom if you are banning books in a school library. And you can't be pro-family if you are investigating parents just because they have a trans kid. And you can't be pro-faith if you're hurting our LGBTQ neighbors. And so I hope all of us will call them out on that hypocrisy this year and next year when we have an election.
Yes, go ahead.
They're much nicer than me because they have to be in the Capitol building with these folks. But this is our frustration at the local level. As you saw in Pflugerville, we changed overnight from an older white German town to the most diverse city in Central Texas. You saw us come out as a council with a resolution last year talking about this absurdity. I have 3 daughters. I have never thought to myself, wow, they're not winning in sports because there's transgender people? It's insane. And we know, this is the problem that really upsets me, is that we know this is all crap. We all know this. They know the narrative is crap. Yet nonetheless, they don't have the fortitude to stand up against these issues, which, to be blunt with you, is an antithesis of what's happening at the local level. You saw the Pride event out in Round Rock. Don't make no mistake. Mayor Morgan got lots of hate mail and everything else on that as well. You see what's going on in Georgetown. You see what's happening in Taylor. Our values, I look at this thing right here, I'm thinking to myself about Texas. They don't get to define Texas values. And that's the part that really upsets us at the local level. We are trying our best to fight against these things. But honestly, we're going to need for y'all to get out there and get people to vote. Mobilize in communities and make them realize when you tell the story, just like you said, people know it's not dissimilar from our DEI conversation that we're having right now in this state, which is, again, crap. When you talk about these things and you explain to them what exactly this is going to do to our community. We know kids have died because HHSC pulled off that suicide hotline off their website. We know people are leaving the state. I see that Denver is love shirt. I have a good friend of mine, a transgender man, who just literally left to go join the AG's office in Denver because of what's going on over here. This is happening. If they don't care about anything else, care about your economy. Because I'm on the board of directors of Lone Star Circle of Care, and I will tell you for a fact, it is extremely hard right now to recruit doctors and nurses into our state because they don't want to have to deal with these issues. They don't want to be charged with criminal charges for just providing care for some of our most vulnerable. Keep that in mind when you're talking about these things.
There we go. Hi. Councilmember, I just want to ask you really quickly, what's something that local communities can do to create more inclusive, welcoming environments? You mentioned some of the issues that the City Council has adopted. Is there anything else that you would want to add about that?
Well, for example, since apparently if we accept state funds for our libraries, we can't have LGBTQ books in our libraries, we're not accepting the funds. You've got to have people with integrity on this level trying to do that. Because make no mistake, the only functional government you have right now is at the local level. God bless them for what they're doing as being honestly combatants, fighting on all this absurd stuff that's happening over here. And you need people at the local level who realize what this is, that they're lies, who are going to step up and make policies in place. Have Pride Fest. Make sure that we're having an inclusive community in everything that we do about that. Because if you don't do that, they're going to win. And we cannot let that happen.
Brad, I want to direct it to you. Your boss, Ricardo Martinez at Equality Texas, described this legislative session as the toughest LGBTQ plus Texans had ever faced. But he did point out, in the face of so much hate, we keep showing up, we keep speaking up, and we never gave up. So where would you point someone to and say there is hope in the fight?
Well, I think there's always hope as long as there's a single person who's willing to do something about an injustice that they see. And I think that's what we saw at the Capitol over and over again. You know, we had debates over that healthcare bill that ended up passing, and 3,000 Texans came out and dropped a card saying they were opposed to that bill. Like, if you look at Texas legislative history, I think only 2 other issues in Texas history ever got more cards dropped against it. One was when Wendy Davis did filibuster against an anti-abortion bill. So we're like in the top 3 for the number of people who turned out and said, in no uncertain terms, that they didn't want this legislation. At the same time, we had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people signing up to testify against bad bills. In some cases, they got to tell their story. In some cases, the legislature and folks who run committees edited their rules to shut down debate so people couldn't actually tell their stories. So they were left just wondering why they couldn't have 2 minutes to say why a bill was bad. But if you look at some of the stuff that's happening in other states, like Florida's gender affirming care ban, I think Missouri just got struck down. part of how those bills are getting like challenged in court and struck down is because they're using the legislative record in those states to show lawmakers' actual intent. When lawmakers are saying that trans people don't exist, when trans people are coming to testify, they're using people's stories in those court filings to demonstrate why these bills are unconstitutional and how they were passed in bad faith. So there's always hope. You know, we had over 500, somewhere around 500 bills across the country get filed attacking our community. 140 plus of those were here in Texas. You know, we defeated the vast majority of those bills, the 7 that affect us directly that passed. We're not done fighting. The ACLU and other organizations are going to challenge them in court. We're going to get people mobilized for elections to try to get some good sense people elected to office. And we're going to keep raising hell whenever and wherever we can by driving people out. And we have had to change how we do that because we want to keep our community safe in this time when it is so dangerous to be visible. But that visibility inspires other people who are watching. Pride festivals like this tell people that it's okay to be who we are and to celebrate each other. So as long as there's a single person who's willing to stand up and say this is wrong, whether they are an elected official or a regular person on the street, there will always be hope. And we just have to hold on to that and use that to support each other as a community moving forward.
I want to open the floor up to all of you. What is giving you hope in this current political environment? I'd like to go first.
So I grew up in South Texas, where there's more cows than people. And so I never thought I would see a pride in so many places. I've been to Pflugerville many times in my life, and there didn't used to be a pride here. And there didn't used to be a pride in Georgetown. In fact, I have experienced bad things in Georgetown personally, and now there's a pride there. That gives me hope that everything I've been to so far this year has had more people at it than I've seen in a long time. So all of you give me hope.
I have never seen a more organized pro-LGBT allies than I saw at the Capitol this last time. And the gathering of people dropping cards, I'm not surprised to hear that that was the top 3 protests. So that gives me hope.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I grew up here in the district that I represent, and I remember my first job in politics was volunteering for the state representative who had my seat many years ago, a guy named Representative Mark Strama. And I came out to Pflugerville many times to knock on doors and to try to organize the community. And I can't believe that 15 years later, we are having a Pride Festival in the middle of Pflugerville. This gives me hope. And that is the history of Pride, right? Out of darkness comes light, and out of hate comes love. And so thank you for giving me hope today.
The arc of justice bends towards, the arc of history bends towards justice. I mean, that's basically what James was saying too. How many of y'all are over 30? How many of y'all are over 40? How many of y'all are over 50?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. How many of y'all are over 60?
Oh yeah.
Okay. Those of us who are in the upper reaches of those numbers, we know how far we have come. We know what it was like back in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s and the aughts, right? Things are so much better now. It does get better. It does get better, and that gives me hope. I've got a niece who came out to her family, to my married family, who are super conservative Republicans, very Catholic, very homophobic. She came out and they had to begrudgingly admit that her spouse was their favorite son-in-law, even though she was a woman. That was a huge win in our family. So really, go back and look where we have come from, and you will have hope. And every time you get a little downhearted and think, I just can't do it anymore, this just feels so futile, think of the shoulders of giants that you are standing on. And think, my God, if they can do it, I can get my ass out of bed and go down and organize, register voters, or maybe even run for elective office to replace the people in that pink gun.
Melodia, do you want to respond to what gives you hope at this moment?
Thank you, Will. What gives me hope at this moment is you, all of us together, our collective power, and what we can accomplish. And somebody said something, never doubt the power of our economic being. So understand that every dollar you put into your investments, to what you purchase, to the gifts you give out those LGBTQ plus books, donate to the Transgender Network of Texas, ensure that your dollar has power. And then also come back and let's organize together and show up like we are doing today and like we did at the legislative session and like we will be continuing to doing, and bring others with you. And together, like I said earlier, we will transform Texas, and that gives me hope.
I mean, a lot of what's been said gives me hope. The number one thing, of course, being all of us, right? We broke records at the Capitol this year in terms of the number of people that came out to fight for our community. This is my 7th legislative session where I've been in the building doing the advocacy, and I remember back in the first few when it was the same maybe 10 people that would come out every time. Now I have to introduce myself to new people every time there's a hearing on a bad or good bill, because more and more people are getting involved all of the time because there's so much care and love for our community now that just wasn't there 10 years ago. That's amazing. We've come a really long way, and we do stand on the shoulders of giants. A lot of what we're doing today are things that we learned from our ancestors and transcestors. I think of Texans like Monica Roberts, who taught a lot of us how to fiercely advocate, whether we were in the state capitol or whether we were in City Hall or whether we were on the streets. And the way that we have taken her legacy and her work as a Black transgender woman from Texas and use that to galvanize ourselves to fight even harder. I think about people of all ages and all races and all classes and backgrounds who are showing up and speaking out for trans people, even if they first have to come to some of us and say, I want to support you. I don't really know what being trans is, and I might need you to explain that to me first, but once you do, then I'll go ahead and yell at somebody. That's amazing. There's so many reasons to have hope. And right now, we're in a backlash phase because we have made progress, but what history will show you is that we always make it through the backlash and we continue to push forward, and that's what we're all going to do together.
So my first Pride was in 1999, and I was a newborn, but not really. I was not out at home. I'd had a huge fight with my mom, and I just had to get out of the house. And I knew where the neighborhood was in Houston, so I was just go to the neighborhood. And then as I got there, there were throngs of people. There was horrible traffic. I just didn't know what was happening. I parked my car, and I stumbled into my first Pride parade. And I was all by myself, and I was terrified, but I was like, these are my people. And there was a drag queen who recognized that I was horrified by myself, who literally became my friend and took care of me and was like, I'll take you to get food and water, and we'll hang out, and you won't be by yourself. So when I'm at Pride celebrations, I always think about that, because that was the thing that gave me hope when I was closeted, right? And terrified of being who I was. And since then, obviously, my work is all LGBTQ related. But I also think about every time we've been at the Capitol, there were folks who were just like me at that first Pride who had no idea what they were doing. And people like Ash, or people like Ricardo at Equality Texas, or people like Sophia on our staff would find these folks and basically just envelop them in kindness and teach them how to lean into the power that they are automatically entitled to as Texans. And I've watched people go to the Capitol as children and literally grow up in that building. And I hate that they've had to do it, but in so many instances, they found purpose in it. We have a trans person who has been at the Capitol for the last 3 legislative sessions who is about to become a psychologist because they recognize that they need trans folks who are helping other trans folks navigate the environment that we're in. So the hope that I have is rooted entirely in people, and even in the horrible stuff that comes out of the legislative session. There's so much good that comes out of the work that we do by continuing to show up, by continuing to be visible, and we are constantly planting these seeds, and those seeds are growing into these amazing advocates who will fight for our community long after folks like us are done.
I think everyone said one version of this or another. Most people are good, and they want to see good being done. I remember in law school, you talked about, not knowing about the issues and just, okay, wait a minute, I want to advocate and how they're doing that. That was exactly me. I remember at UT Law when Outlaw started in 2004. And, okay, wait a minute. Okay, you need support? What's going on here? Explain to me what's going on. What can I do? How can I help? I think Lambda Legal got mentioned. As an attorney, I cannot tell you, Shelley's team, what they're doing over there on so many levels is absolutely phenomenal, to say the least. If you don't know Lambda Legal, look it up. I look at, what I see with my own kids. And I see the changes that have happened. You're right. What Senator Eckhardt said about that is that, let's be blunt, progress is never linear. We act like it is. We act like, hey, well, guess what? We got rid of slavery. Then after that, we got rid of Jim Crow, then people got the right to vote, everything's fine. Obviously, that's not the case. You'll go forward, fall back. Go forward, fall back. But as long as you keep pushing forward, and you know that people truly want to be there for one another, truly care for one another. This is an amazing country. My parents are Haitian immigrants. I'm first generation in this country. This is an amazing country in so many different ways. And I truly believe that it's a good country and good will be done. But it's not just the people who are advocating that we need to support. We need the people who are quiet, who see what's happening and aren't doing anything about it. Those are the people we'll remember when these issues come back. Those are the people that we can make a discernible difference when we're talking about how moving forward. Those are the people that we need to go ahead and get on the front line instead of sitting on the back.
And that, everybody, is a wrap. So please give a round of applause for Ash Hall, Brad Pritchett, Melodia Gutierrez, Rudy Metayer, Senator Sarah Eckhardt, Representative James Talarico, Meaghan Bihun, and Representative Sheryl Cole. Thank you all, everybody.